You're listening to episode 10 of the You, Me, and BTC podcast. The MtGox debacle is too big to ignore, so we kick off today's show with a few thoughts on the subject. We try not to beat a dead horse, however, and move on to chat a bit about how gold and silver relate to Bitcoin. We'll be asking you, our listeners, to take action today by helping us encourage a well-known gold bug to correct a mistake. Some regulators have considered banning Bitcoin, and we think that they should know it's not really possible. Later in this episode, we laugh about some funny money that might not be as funny as everyone thinks. Thanks for tuning in. Your hosts are Tim Baker, John Stuart, and myself, Daniel Brown. Here we go. Okay, everybody, thanks for joining us for another episode of You, Me, and BTC. Couple things before we get started. I want to mention two fairly important things. First of all, we have a new logo that I'm pretty excited about. It's been on the site for about 2 weeks or something, but we had a designer from the BitcoinTalk.org forums. His name is Bitcrea, Bitcrea. He's pretty cool, he's a nice guy, gave us a good rate. Great work, too. I saw his past work before I asked him to do ours, and it's really great. Professional and everything. It's real good work. So, yeah, you can go to our website if you want to see it. He has a Twitter account at Bitcrea. So make sure if you ever need any graphic design work or anything, he's someone you should definitely check him out. I'm sure you'll love his work, really. It's amazing. Actually, he just started his website, bitcrea.com. And he has all of his past work there too, except for ours. Anyway, maybe he'll listen to this and then put it up. Anyway, but no, it really is great. So check him out. And if you want to use him, I'm sure he would love that. And like I said, his prices are definitely doable and fair. So another important thing, we're recording on Sunday, March 2nd, and this episode's going to air on Thursday, March 6th. And the important part is 1 week from March 6th, so March 13th, we are going to have, well, hopefully it's going to be our best episode yet. I mean, it's the one I'm the most excited for. We're going to have the CEO of Amagi Metals. His name is Stephen Macaskill. We're going to do an interview with him, and I'm a little bit more than excited. We're elated to have him. He's going to be the first guest we ever have on the show. I mentioned him once or twice before, but want to let you guys know, 1 week from the day that this episode airs, or March 13th, make sure you listen and tune in, because you're not going to want to miss that. He's a big advocate of sound money. We're going to ask him why he got into Bitcoin, why he accepts Bitcoin. We're going to ask him about some political views and everything too. I want to ask him what sound money even is, and things like that. So that should be exciting. Anyway, today's episode is going to be about MtGox. A whole lot's happened with them recently. We touched on them before everything really happened, and we want to just kind of get back there and talk about again what did happen, how everybody reacted, what might or might not happen in the future. So we're going to get started with that.
Yeah, so when we talked about this originally, we said that we were kind of saying all of it was not all of it, but we were blaming MtGox quite a bit, which now we know that was right, but something else came out where they basically threw Bitcoin under the bus, said, oh, well, there was this bug. I mean, most people knew about it. I can't honestly say that I knew too much about it, but I guess maybe I'd heard about it before, but other people had known about it. Other exchanges had already not fixed it, but had set up stuff to keep themselves from being injured by it. So that came out, so now we need to, because I think on the podcast we even said that maybe we shouldn't have been blaming MtGox that much, so now I'm on here to say, yes, we should be blaming MtGox, and we should be blaming, what's his name again? Mark Karpelez, whatever, with his little, I'm sorry I lost all of your money, and I'm just going to bow, and that somehow makes an apology for it. So yeah, the internet's been ripping into him pretty good. So I'm happy to see that. Actually, I've been thinking about this with everything that I'm kind of wondering what's going to happen with him. Because like some people lost quite a bit of money, and it's not like he's a Federal Reserve person that he's kind of just like untouchable. You can't do anything with him. I'm not in any way implying that I'm going to do anything to him. I don't want to do anything to him. I'm not planning on doing anything to him, but I'm kind of wondering what might happen to him, because he's in a weird situation where he had all this money and he lost all this money to people, but he doesn't have any of this protection that a Federal Reserve person has, or some kind of a government official. He just runs another business. Just normally businesses don't lose this much unless they're obviously a Ponzi scheme. At that point, the person who's running it is going into hiding. Maybe I'm getting off on a tangent here. Anyway, I guess I'll read some parts from an article I found on CNN, and I picked CNN because I was kind of hoping that they were going to say some stuff about it that I didn't really agree with it, and which I kind of found some. I'm kind of happy to find that they didn't say too much. They weren't like, oh, well, this is the end of Bitcoin and stuff. But just at the beginning, it just says now we know MtGox has finally filed for bankruptcy, and that was kind of up in the air with a paper that came out that got leaked where MtGox was, I think they were looking at rebranding, where somehow they were expecting to be able to go, well, we lost all your money, but if we remove MtGox, if we remove Mount from it, or MT, or however they say it, then you'll trust us again, or something. I don't know. But anyway, from the article, the company filed for bankruptcy protection at a Tokyo court on Friday with debts of 6.5 billion yen, or $64 million, Japanese media reported. MtGox was one of the world's largest Bitcoin exchanges until earlier this month, when it stopped investors from withdrawing money after discovering that its trading platform was under attack by hackers. Which, that even brings up the question as to if this was hackers, or, I mean, obviously some people are saying, well, maybe someone in MtGox did something with all the money. I mean, I don't know. I don't see how you lose this much money and then be like, well, we didn't notice it going away, but it's gone now. I mean, because I think the Let's Talk Bitcoin podcast, they had Charlie Shrem on, and they were talking about how much would have to be stolen every single day, and it's not something that you would, if you were running any kind of a business where you checked your books at all, that they shouldn't have noticed this until now. So, I mean, no one really knows what's really true right now and what's going on. But then, obviously, most of the mainstream media then takes this, and like every other time something bad in Bitcoin happens, it says Bitcoin's dead, it's going to fail, and then it doesn't, and then they're like, well, okay. And suddenly, whenever anything bad happens to Bitcoin, everyone becomes an expert on Bitcoin and is so sure, and they're like, well, see, we told you what was going to happen. But whenever it goes up, everyone's just like, everyone's kind of silent on it. But there was part of this article that I wanted to mention. Oh, I mean, they do at least admit, CNN admits that a cyber attack may have finally killed off the exchange, but it was in dire financial straits long before that, which I think it was way back whenever they shut down Dwala's connection with MtGox to easily get fiat in and out, that I was like, nah, I'm gonna get out of this. And we even talked about it before, that they kept on saying they were going to support Litecoin, and then they never did.
Yeah.
And so I was like, yeah, I'd rather just use Coinbase. But the one part of this CNN thing, it says confidence in the virtual currency has been shaken. It has lost about 50% of its value since trading as high as $1,000 last year. Which, I mean, first off, it traded a lot higher than that. If you look at, I mean, various exchanges, but I mean, even on Coinbase, or the average, it was up, I thought, around 1,100 or something like that.
Right.
But they're also, I mean, that kind of makes it sound like it just dropped from that, which it's been dropping since China fell out. And so I guess anyone really listening to this probably already knows that, but I figured I'd bring that up about it and whine about it.
That's one of the biggest things for me is the way the media reacted. They said, well, I mean, a lot of people were saying that Bitcoin is over and people think that Bitcoin was like hacked or something. In fact, and it was huge in the media. A lot of people, friends that I know and family that normally don't really care much about Bitcoin, they were coming to me and they heard on the news that Bitcoin was falling apart and everything. I'm like, well, I had to explain everything to them, you know? There was something that you might be able to consider a bug, but all the other exchanges were able to deal with, and it's not a bug, it's part of Bitcoin. And MtGox just didn't understand that. Well, I mean, they probably understood it, but they didn't react to that. I mean, we could go on and on about what the bug was, but I'm not going to try to describe it, partly because my explanation probably isn't going to be exactly right. But yeah, like I was saying, the media they just ripped Bitcoin apart. I remember, I really wish I knew I think it was a Facebook status, and I really wish I knew who it was. It could have been Twitter. That's a problem with social media. It's hard to search for older things. But somebody was saying, I'm going to butcher it because I don't have it in front of me, but I'll do my best. I'm pretty sure they were talking maybe like about the Beatles, and they're like, remember when the Beatles released that really bad album and the whole music industry crashed? Or like, there was a couple examples that pretty much paralleled that idea.
I mean, it's even worse than that, though. I mean, it's like MtGox, the only reason why it was still around is because they were so early. It's like it's just some random bum on the street. You started, like, I don't know if there were no bank. Like, the first bank was probably just some guy who was like, okay, I'll hold your gold for you and I'll give you these IOUs. Now, maybe this wasn't the first bank, but okay, let's take that. There are no banks. Then this first guy comes along, is like, okay, I'll give you IOUs for your gold and I'll keep it in here secure and everything because you don't want to be carrying around gold because it's heavy and you might get it's harder to conceal. And then that guy he just doesn't run his stuff well. He is just pretty stupid when it comes to doing the business stuff. And then his bank falls apart and then you go, see, all this stuff, the banking and gold and money, just money in general, it doesn't work because this idiot ruined his own business and people who, I don't know why people had thousands of dollars. I heard someone say thousands of Bitcoins. First off, in any online wallet, I don't know why you have thousands of Bitcoins in there.
That's insane, yeah. Not smart.
That first of all, and then MtGox. Why would you have it in there?
Exactly.
I mean, they've already had problems for years now, or maybe like a year and a half. And then you're gonna blame Bitcoin for it. This is what happens when you don't have the government bailing you out. All these banks, all the US banks that got bailed out, they're just gonna get this even worse. Yeah, it's not good while you're going through it, but it's a lot better than what's gonna happen if the US banks ever do, when they do fail, because they keep on getting bailed out and the market isn't just destroying that bank. It's being these bad banks, the loans they're making and everything, and the fractional reserve banking. It's not being corrected by the market, which is, if it was up to the market, that would be what happened to MtGox would happen. I mean, it gets rid of bad actors. So I don't even really see this as I mean, I feel bad for the people who lost their money. I don't understand, like I said, why they kept it in MtGox. But I think this is how a market works, because you need to get rid of stuff. Sometimes you can't have everybody succeed, especially if they're running stuff this badly.
Yeah, I agree with everything you guys have said so far. The only thing that I might add is that, like, the difference between this and, like, a bank failing, especially now, maybe with your example of the guy starting the first bank, it's a little bit different. But I guess just because Bitcoin is still in such an infant stage right now, at least I think it's still in an infant stage, I think it has, like, hurt the economy as a whole a bit. Not that I don't think it will recover, because I think it definitely can recover, but I definitely think it's had a bad effect overall.
Yeah, it hasn't been good for Bitcoin. Part of that, though, I think is from the negative kind of stuff it got. And I mean, even I was like, oh, well, I don't really like how the price is going down now. I don't know what I should do. And I kind of had that voice in the back of my head or mind or whatever the phrase is about like just sell it now and get out, which I haven't heard anyone on Facebook, because most of the people on Facebook that use Bitcoin are either like you guys where, I mean, if you lose all your Bitcoin, you're not going to end up on the street, or it's people who are like really hardcore anarchist types who are just like, no, I'm not doing this. This is mine. I don't care if it goes down to $1. It's still better than having the Federal Reserve note stuff.
Tim, I'm glad you brought up the idea of having like gold and silver notes, because gold and silver are hard to carry around. Because I was actually just thinking this morning, well, for our audience, Tim and I fairly often read a gold and silver price commentator, Franklin Sanders. You can just Google him. His website's themoneychanger.com. And he's a pretty cool guy. I don't agree with 100% of his ideas, partly because he doesn't like Bitcoin. But he's a pretty cool guy. And like we were saying with the media, well, I agree with you too, John. When we said this the last time we mentioned MtGox, how Bitcoin is new and all these exchanges and companies are dealing with something that nobody's ever dealt with before. So to some very minimal extent, we have to understand that this is difficult, but obviously MtGox made bigger mistakes. Anyway, I was reading, well, and I told you about this, Tim. This is from February 25th on The Money Changer. It's his daily commentary on the gold price and silver prices and whatnot. And he's mentioned before, not often, but he's said before how Bitcoin isn't real money. I just remember he mentioned it during the early 2013 bubble. Anyway, he said the world's biggest Bitcoin distributor, MtGox, has gone offline, sunk beneath the waves of the future. Turns out Bitcoin had a quirk that allowed some dishonest souls to take MtGox for nearly 400 million. Well, or take MtGox's customers, as the case may be. It was not reported today that any owners of gold or silver who had taken physical delivery had been shut down or lost their metal to a computer program backdoor. See, I have a problem with that. Couple things. And I'm actually gonna email him, because I thought of this morning, and he always mentions, or not always, but now and then he mentions what his readers tell him and everything. And I want him to correct this mistake, and here's why. I mean, I'm not gonna tell him that he should believe in Bitcoin. I understand, and I say this all the time on my website and in the podcast. And like I said just now, Bitcoin is completely new. We have no idea what's going to happen. All right. It could go to zero. It could be hacked. There could be a bug that nobody knows about. I freely admit that. But he really misrepresented it here. I don't know if he exactly stated any facts that were lies, but he really misrepresented it here. By saying that gold and silver can be physically owned, he implied that Bitcoins cannot, and that's what he doesn't understand. When people had Bitcoins in MtGox, they were trusting MtGox with their private keys. But you don't have to do that. You can make paper wallets and have your own Bitcoins almost physically. You really can. It's hard to describe. It might be hard to say that you have them physically, but really, if you think about it, it's pretty much the same thing, because if you print out the private keys, then you have the key to your Bitcoins in your hand, and nobody else can get them, not from the internet, not from anywhere. Now, sure, some people are worried if you have to generate a key on a computer, and that could be stolen, or you could have malware on your computer. Well, there's ways that you can do it completely offline, and they're complicated, and some people think they're overkill, sure. But it is possible, is all I'm saying. It is possible to have your Bitcoins almost physically in your hand. And Franklin Sanders didn't really appreciate that. And I'm going to explain that to him, and I'm going to ask him to, at the very least, explain the facts to his readers, because he severely misrepresented Bitcoin. And the problem is, he makes fun of the media and the government all the time. He hates the media and he hates the government, and now he's making the exact same mistake that they do. He's not getting his facts, he's not understanding things, and he needs to make up for that. I still like him a lot. His gold commentary is nice, even though he's been telling us that gold is set to explode for a year now and it's done nothing but drop. I don't care. He's been in the field for something like 30 years. He knows what he's talking about. I still believe it's over time, sure. I still believe the prices will go up a lot. So I'm still going to read him, but I want to let him know that. And actually, we've talked about on this show how if we mention something, maybe the listeners can help make a difference too. So I encourage you to, like I said, the moneychanger.com. There's a dash in between the and Money Changer. It's February 25th. Read it if you want to, and shoot him an email. Don't be rude to him. Please don't be rude to him. Like I said, he's a nice guy. He's really smart. Just let him know that he misrepresented the facts and ask him to make up for it. And that's what I'm going to do tonight. Along the same lines, I wanted to mention the Liberty Dollar setup sort of thing, which was, like you said, Tim, gold and silver are hard to carry around, so they gave you notes for gold and silver. I don't know how much you guys know about this. I don't know a ton. I've just glanced over some articles online. But basically, it was that sort of thing. They gave you Liberty Dollar notes, and that represented gold and silver. What happened was that operation was stormed by the government. They confiscated all the gold and silver, and anybody who had those notes was out of luck. They still are. They lost that money. The government has it sitting in a warehouse somewhere probably, or a safe or whatever. And so I'm not saying that the Liberty Dollar is a good idea. I would not recommend you trust any other company with your money. That's why I like Bitcoin, because I have the advantage of trusting myself with the money without having to carry around heavy gold and silver. Right? I mean, that's part of the reason I trust Bitcoin and like it. So I'm not saying the Liberty Reserve was a good idea. I'm not saying that Franklin Sanders would support the Liberty Reserve. I'm just saying that the exact same sort of situation could happen with gold and silver as did with MtGox. If you trust someone else with your money, it could disappear. It could be stolen. It could be stormed by the government.
Stolen,
yeah. I said stormed. Well, I really did mean stormed before, though, because
No, yeah, I know.
I don't remember, I don't know the whole story, but I'm pretty sure, the FBI and SWAT or who knows what just literally broke into the...
Yeah, they labeled the guy domestic terrorist because he was printing alternative currencies. So they look at it as him trying to attack their economy, and I'm sure they do that if Satoshi hadn't kind of just gone off the radar and no one really knows who he is, I'm pretty sure they'd be going after him too. I feel like maybe they can't swing. Well, I mean, there's so much stuff they sell to the American people, and Americans just go, oh, well, whatever they tell us, that I'm kind of surprised they haven't gone after any and all Bitcoin exchanges. I'm kind of surprised they haven't gone after them, but they can't really say that they're issuing them. They're just like, well, if you want, we'll take dollars for this. So, but I know he was labeled a domestic terrorist, and they came and they took everyone's money from that.
Yeah, you're talking about the guy who ran the Liberty Dollar operation.
Yeah, and he still hasn't even been sentenced for that, and that was several years ago. He's kind of just stuck in a legal limbo, or he doesn't know if they're just gonna like, all right, we sentenced you, you're going to jail tomorrow. But he's not allowed to promote it or anything like that. About what Sanders said about Bitcoin, I think it's just like gold and silver. I don't even see as well. No, I'm definitely not right now. But even in the future, I don't know how much I'm going to be wanting to use gold and silver unless it's in some kind of an emergency situation. Just because it is so much harder to carry around like 100-ounce silver bar to go different places. And then if you're using gold, how, like, the small pieces you're going to have to break it into. I have silver because I want to keep value and store value. I get Bitcoin because I want to spend it and because I want to speculate on it. I want to hope that it goes up. And it's just easier to do that. Bitcoin, I don't think Bitcoin, because it's not physical, it's not something that you can, because even on a piece of paper, it's not like, the Bitcoin isn't on there. It's just this says that Bitcoin or however many Bitcoin you have on there is yours. You're not really like sending Bitcoin. You're just sending the ownership of it to a different person whenever you quote unquote spend them. I don't see Bitcoin as being a good thing to just hold value because especially not now because it is so volatile. It's either going to go up or it's going to go down. And right now for a while it's been going down. So people are able to just say, well, I'm an expert on economics because Bitcoin's going down now, even though it's still up 5,000% or whatever of it was last year, because it's not 10,000% up. So it's only 5,000. So I was right all along about Bitcoin just being terrible and horrible. Now it may go to zero. It might go -%, but that's still, there are two different currencies, but you can't really compare them. While you were talking, I was thinking about using an analogy of like an MP3, just like on your computer or on an MP3 player, or an MP3 or like an MP4 versus like a CD or versus like a VHS tape. And this has nothing to do with the storing value or anything. It's just one is very physical. It can't be corrupted by a virus. It might just get old, I guess. It can get old, and I guess silver or gold could get destroyed that way. Maybe. I don't know. Because I guess they're divisible, so you could always melt it back, but they can get stolen physically. But, your Bitcoins can get stolen physically if your laptop gets stolen, or they can get taken by a virus or by someone running a bad exchange like MtGox. So, it's not really that fair to compare them. They both have good uses, but whenever I pay someone online, I don't want to have to send them silver in an envelope.
Yeah, Tim, I loved what you were saying. I was thinking the same thing the whole time, and I've just kind of been waiting for the chance to say it, but...
And for one of us to shut up.
Yeah, you pretty much said most of what I was thinking. Yeah, I would love for Bitcoin to be, the perfect, sound money, but really, I don't think that's where the value of it is. We've had other ways to have sound money in the past, like gold or silver, and, those may not be perfect, but I think they work pretty well, generally. The value of Bitcoin is as a means of exchange. And we've talked before about how, I think we've talked about this on the show, about how a good way to spend Bitcoin is to spend it and then buy it back with US dollars, right when you have it. If you think about it that way, it's less about buying Bitcoin because you think it's going to be this perfect currency, and it's more about using it because it's an efficient way of trading with people. So you might want to store the bulk of your value in something like gold or silver. And this is something you might even want to tell to Franklin Sanders, Daniel, that, yeah, maybe it is a better idea to have the bulk of your value stored in gold and silver, but that doesn't make Bitcoin useless. It has a point other than just being worth something. And even if it did end up going down to being worth $1 for a Bitcoin, you could still use it for stuff. It's like using PayPal or something like that, where you could just, whenever you want to buy something and you don't want it to be on record or whatever, or you want to be able to send it instantly and anonymously, like cash, you could just buy some Bitcoin for however much you want to send somebody and send it. It doesn't require you to invest all your trust in it and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And that's a good way of putting it. You don't have to put all your trust in it, because if you don't trust it, you can still just use it to transfer money as much as you want, as quick as you want, and then cash it out on the other end, and nobody has to trust it for more than a few minutes or, a few hours or days or whatever. So you're exactly right. Tim, I'm not sure if I'm a huge fan of your MP3 thing.
I was testing it out there.
Yeah, a lot of times it's an MP3 that is stored on a CD. Sometimes, not always.
Well, that's why I switched from, more of a digital version of, a video versus... Because I was thinking, I put MP3s on CDs all the time because, yes, I pirate stuff. And I put it on CDs.
A better example would be a vinyl record, because that's actually...
Okay.
It's actually analog information.
Right, yeah, analog versus digital might be better, but I still understand.
Or tape actually is probably the best, but...
Yeah, I still understand your point, is that while a paper wallet would have a lot of the physical characteristics of gold and silver, there is a little bit of a difference, especially when you ignore the fact that it's a paper wallet and just talk about the differences between Bitcoin and gold and silver. Yeah, there are differences, and important differences. And like I said, I like them both. I have some of both. Like I said, we're going to have Amagi Metals next week, and he likes gold and silver too. By he, I mean the CEO.
Yeah, yeah, and he takes Bitcoin, Litecoin, Dogecoin. So, he takes all that stuff.
You're listening to the You, Me, and Bitcoin podcast. We need your help. For starters, we would love it if you would take the time to visit our website, youmeandbtc.com. There you can find a unique Bitcoin address for every single podcast and article. We would be forever grateful if you could provide some feedback by tipping your favorite content. We also have a Facebook page that needs some likes. You can find a link on our site or go straight to facebook.com/youmeandbtc. We'll keep you updated there about ourselves and any important Bitcoin news throughout the week. Lastly, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the show. You can find us on iTunes or sign up to receive email updates on our website. Thanks for your support.
Did you guys hear about it was a dude from West Virginia who wants to ban Bitcoin?
No.
I didn't hear about that.
I think he's going to have an aneurysm when he finds out that you can print guns.
Wait, what? How did you get from banning Bitcoin to printing guns?
Just the idea of banning something like that. Like, you can't, how are you going to...
Okay.
It's like trying to ban file sharing or anything like that. Just, we need to shut down the internet completely.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm not sure if this is the same guy, because I went from that article on CNN to one from USA Today about Yellen, the new Federal Reserve chairman, because she said the Fed can't regulate Bitcoin. And in the article, it says that this Senator Joe Manchin, who I think he's a Democrat from West Virginia, who I think that's the guy who said that he wants the government to ban Bitcoin. And she told him that, I think it's important to understand that this is a payment innovation that's taking place entirely outside the banking industry. The Federal Reserve simply does not have the authority to supervise or regulate Bitcoin in any way. Which I'm guessing by authority she just means, like, the power, I guess? I doubt that she's saying, like, that's not our business, but... Because later on it says, Manchin pressed Yellen to impose rules on the virtual currency, noting it has been used by scam artists and hackers to steal... Wait, what? I'd read this before and I didn't think about it. Noting it has been used by scam artists and hackers to steal money from hardworking Americans, Bitcoin has been the currency of choice for illegal international activity, including money laundering. But how are hackers stealing money by using Like, are they stealing money from the people who use Bitcoin? Because those are the evil people, according to him.
That's true.
Yeah. Plus, I'm pretty sure that people use US dollars to do more criminal activity. They just busted this drug guy from a cartel in Mexico. He had $22 billion in $100 bills in a room. It was like 4 foot tall and like 20 feet long by like 10 feet across. Just a stack of all $100 bills. That is insane. Anyways,
yeah, that's crazy.
That's kind of off topic, but...
Well, that, and there's people use US dollars. That's what most of the world uses for illegal stuff. But also, anytime anyone in government talks about being a scam artist and taking away people's money, I'm just like, you're just lying. Yeah, you do that. Either you're lying and you know that you do that, or you're just an idiot and you can't tell that you're talking to the woman who's in charge of just devaluing your money every single day.
Yeah, I remember I wrote several months ago, I wrote an article on youmeandbtc.com. The title of the article was like, will the government be able to bring down Bitcoin? Or will they try? I forget what the exact title was, but I actually distinguished between the two questions. Will they and will they try? And that's an important distinction because when it comes to will they try, yeah, maybe, probably. Will they be able to? Almost certainly not, because it's completely decentralized. That's the whole point. In fact, when a lot of people are asked to describe Bitcoin, that's one of the first 2 or 3 words that comes out is decentralized, which means that it runs all over the world. It runs on every computer that has a Bitcoin wallet. Sort of. I mean, there's some technicalities there, but the point is, in order to shut it down, you really basically would have to shut down the internet. That's really about the only way you could do it. In fact, I remember we even said once how, I mean, this is a theoretical thing, but if you wanted to, you could, if every computer but one got knocked out, you could still probably just run it on there and just let it mine away and make transactions if it wanted to. Like, you can't take out Bitcoin. You know, there might be ways to diminish the value of it. Like, the media has been attacking it for the last few weeks because of MtGox. Well, in some ways that devalues it for a time because people think, wow, Bitcoin is hacked or it's broken. So yeah, maybe the value will drop for a bit. There are ways that the government can go after it. And I hate to say it, but for all I know, they might be successful one of these days if they really pull something off. Maybe they'll convince people that they shouldn't use Bitcoin and everyone will stop using it. Well, probably not everyone, but maybe it will basically lose a large portion of its user base and the value will stop rising and things like that. I certainly hope not, but the government convinces everyone to hand over their money every year, so who knows, maybe they could do it to some extent. But in terms of the actual Bitcoin network, it's almost certainly impossible, I think.
I did look it up, and it is that Senator Joe Manchin, I don't care, calls for a Bitcoin ban as regulators seek accelerated push on the Washington Post. It says the implosion of a once popular Bitcoin exchange has some lawmakers calling for a ban on the virtual currency. On Wednesday, this article was put out February 26th. On Wednesday, Senator Joe Manchin wrote a letter to the regulatory agencies arguing that Bitcoin is disruptive to our economy. The clear ends of Bitcoin for either transacting in illegal goods and services or speculative gambling may make me wary of its use. Manchin wrote, I urge the regulators to work together, act quickly, and prohibit this dangerous currency from harming hardworking Americans. So, yeah, this is what's disrupting our economy. No, it's not that I live off of stealing tax money from people or that I work for a group that does this. I'm trying to stop myself from just yelling right now. I'm sorry. I can't tell if he's just an old white guy who just has no idea what's going on with computers, and he's like my grandmother, who's just like, Tim, how does this work? I don't really, they think that, like, you can just, like, stop it somehow, or if he just thinks he's, I don't know.
That's part of the issue, is that a lot of people don't understand it. Maybe they do think you can just turn it off, because part of the reason that they might think that is just because it is so new and we've never really had anything like it before. So to some extent it's understandable, but all they have to do is look it up and research it for 10 minutes and they'll realize.
You're asking too much of people, Daniel.
That might be right. But that's the same kind of mistake that the media is making and Franklin Sanders is making, is they just don't understand it. They don't get that it's decentralized. I mean, maybe just because nobody's told them, nobody's explained it to them, and hopefully they'll see it eventually, but unfortunately at that point, they might switch over from ignorant to stubborn and not care what you say and continue to insist that they should try and take it down or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, I was going to say that before, but maybe Sanders is just, I don't know how old he is, but I imagine with how long he says he's been in this stuff, he's just a little bit older. But, and that's fine. That doesn't bother me as much when someone's just like, okay, they got this stolen, haha, they're kind of dumb for doing that. Versus someone who tries to tell me that I'm not allowed to use this because some people lost their money, and part of it was the speculative gambling makes me wary of its use. Is he, like, do you think he's just talking about people just hoping it goes up, or is he talking about...
I think that would be part of it, because he could see that as potentially dangerous if it does become a long-lasting, overinflated bubble, because then a lot of people will put a lot of money into it, and then it could crash. If he thinks that would happen, I could understand why he wouldn't like that or think it's dangerous. Obviously, we wouldn't agree, but...
Yeah, so fix your own economy, then you can come blame and tell me that Bitcoin is overbought and it's overinflated and it's just a stupid fad.
Yeah, that's definitely important too, is no matter what you say about Bitcoin, the dollar is kind of worse in every way. So even if you did admit that Bitcoin had loads of flaws and was a joke and wasn't worth a dime, well, a dime's not worth a dime either, so.
Oh, someone put up a pic, I don't know where it was, but they found a bag of, it was 100 pennies, 100 plastic pennies, and it was $2.34. Okay, I didn't know if you had seen that.
I think it was more than $3, but yeah, that was good.
Okay,
Yeah, I think that was Adam Kokesh.
Oh, okay.
I don't even know how to kind of wrap my mind around that. Like, there's pieces of plastic that I guess not everyone recognizes the value. Like, I'm pretty sure maybe it was like, let's say it was $3.49 that they were on the shelf for. A bag of 100 plastic play pennies for $3.49. I guess part of the reason that what I'm about to say isn't completely true is because not everyone attributes that value to it. Not everyone would pay that much for it. And I bet a lot of people would pay more than $1 for it. Maybe. Anyway, it's just weird. Like, how do you wrap your mind around the fact that a piece of plastic that looks like your money could maybe be traded at a higher value, even though it's a piece of plastic in the same shape? Like, if everybody did attribute that value to it and bought a bunch of plastic pennies, they could use them and trade them at a higher value than a metal penny or like
That's
a real
what we
minted.
should start doing. We should just start trading in.
I think I'm gonna invest all my money in plastic pennies.
Well, there's that.
Like
that it's worth more than. Yeah. Just start out slow. Just go to the store and just buy all of them and see what they say. But
yeah,
I mean, our real pennies, just like that's what doesn't make sense to me is how the plastic is worth more than the pennies that we have today that are newer than like 1983 or something. Because the ones before that, the melt value now is like 2 cents. But any of the newer ones, they're less. I think they're less than half a cent. And so I don't.
Well, that's part of the thing. That's what I meant when I said not everyone attributes that value to it.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure the manufacturer bought that amount of plastic for probably less than a cent. If you think of bulk pricing, I mean, I've never done anything with manufacturing. I have no idea. But in my head, I would imagine that you could buy a buttload of plastic for $100 and make bags and bags and bags of those pennies. And again, I have no stats in front of me, but just in my head, I would imagine that the plastic value of those pennies is probably worth less than a penny. I don't know, but
I'm looking at Amazon. I don't know why they have this in learning resources. I mean, if you're in a school that can't afford for 100 pennies just for kids to look at, but
hey, that's actually an interesting point. If you're going to spend $3.49 on a bag of play money, maybe to teach your kids about money at school, why wouldn't you just take $1 to the bank and get a roll of pennies or 2 rolls of pennies? You could teach the exact same thing for a third of the price.
I think maybe it's safer.
Well, that's true, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
But any of these things I'm finding on Amazon, which normally Amazon has pretty cheap stuff, these 100 pack plastic pennies are $5. There's those more buying choices that are really inexpensive, and then they have like $12 worth of shipping, and they have pretty good reviews. So I guess there's a lot of people buying these things.
Thanks for listening to episode 10. Don't forget to join us March 13th for our interview with the CEO of Amagi Metals.